This is called the problem of evil. If God exists, why is there suffering? Now, very difficult to answer this in a couple of minutes. But first we must see the problem. How he has put it is a variation. He has come upon it himself, but the general form of the problem is this. God is all-powerful, if God exists. God is all-powerful, omnipotent. God is all-knowing, omniscient. If God is all-knowing and all-powerful, then God knows the sufferings of everybody. And God is all-powerful, so God can do anything, can remove the sufferings of everybody. Add to this, God is loving. So a loving, powerful, knowing God, why does he not remove the sufferings of people? Do you see the problem? If God was not powerful, see, human parents are loving. You would not want your children to suffer. But you, as human beings, we are limited. We have limited power. Human parents have limited power. You do your best for your children, but that's not enough because human beings do not have that kind of power. So we want that the children should not suffer, but we don't have the power. But suppose the human beings had the power to do everything good for the children, wouldn't you do it? Of course you would do it. Now the heavenly parent, heavenly father or mother, why doesn't he, she, it, who is loving and powerful and knowing, why doesn't he remove suffering? That's the question, the problem of evil. And many, many answers are there. Many, many answers. If I told you some of them, you would be underwhelmed. None of them are very convincing. There's one answer that it is character building. Suffering makes you stronger. But you can immediately object. How does the suffering of a baby make it stronger? A disease or a starving child dies in some underprivileged part of the world. How did it become stronger? Or the suffering of an animal. How is the animal becoming stronger by suffering? I mean, in general, sometimes it does. The classic example is that the pupa, caterpillar, which breaks out of the cocoon and becomes a butterfly. So some experiment I heard, I don't know how true it is, that if you help it, if you remove the covering, then it will not be able to fly because its wings require that exercise to come out. So then argument is given, those who support this theory, like that we need this struggle, suffering, to become spiritually stronger. Maybe in some cases it is true, maybe in other cases not true. It is an important theological argument. In fact, there is a whole branch of theology called theodicy, justifying the ways of God to man. Explain. God will not explain. So on behalf of God, we have to charge God, and we have to also provide the defense counsel also. So God is absolutely unconcerned. And many other theories are there. Why is there suffering? What is the theory in Hinduism? One common theory, the standard answer in Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism is the law of karma. It's not God's fault. Whose fault is it? It's yours. It's ours. So, how is it our fault? Law of karma is cause and effect. Consequences. Actions have consequences. So if I'm getting consequences now, pleasant or unpleasant, usually I don't ask too many questions when the consequences are pleasant. Win a lottery, I don't ask questions. Did I deserve to? Why did I win this lottery? Oh no. On the other hand, if something unfortunate happens, unpleasant happens, why do I deserve this? It has never made sense to me. There's so many wonderful people, loving people. I've lost faith in God. I, especially sometimes a beloved person, went through so much suffering. I prayed and prayed and prayed. Nothing happened. I lost faith in God. This kind of thing, I understand the emotional content behind it. But what does not gel with me is that you knew there is tremendous suffering in the world just because in your own case, you experienced it firsthand. Now you have lost faith in God. In your place, I would have said, I lost faith in God from the very beginning because there is so much suffering all around. Not because I or my beloved person suffered. That my suffering makes me lose faith in God, that argument somehow Though many people make it, but it doesn't cut much ice with me. Houston Smith, the great professor of religion, whose book, The World's Religions, it's still a textbook, standard textbook. He died a couple of years ago. He had a very tragic incident in his life. His beloved granddaughter was murdered. And then afterwards, there was a radio interview, sometime afterwards, and the interviewer asked, "So, Professor Smith, do you still believe in God after this?" So the person who told me this, narrated, she's a nun in Santa Barbara, and she knew Houston Smith quite well, and she could mimic him very beautifully. So she told me that when they asked the question, he replied in his characteristic way. He replied, "How absurd! The people that die and are murdered all over the world, all throughout history. Just because today it is my granddaughter, I should stop believing in God? How absurd!" Whether you believe in God or not, that's a different thing. This cannot be a ground for believing or disbelieving. So law of karma is one. Suppose that doesn't cut ice with you. Though that is, I remember there's this book, Professor Arthur Herman, I've referred this earlier also. He was a professor of philosophy in Hawaii University. He wrote a book, The Problem of Evil in Indian Philosophy. But there he has collected the answers, which I mean answers to this question. He has collected the answers, 23 answers. I gave only 2 answers now. 23 answers he has collected to why there is suffering in the world if God exists. 23 answers. None of them are very convincing. So don't be in a hurry to find out what are the answers. But there are different answers. He has collected it from the different religions of the world, philosophies of the world, literature of the world. He has collected those answers. One more answer. Let me see if you like it. Buddha's answer. Not only law of karma. A deeper thing is, as he said, all compounded things decay. Everything is transitory in this world. So, if everything is transitory in this world, whatever situation you have, which you like, is bound to, by definition, melt away after some time. We like certain things and we don't like the rest of it. This situation is good, this person is good, this relationship is good, this food is good, but only for a time being, because it will change. The person will change, your taste will change, body ages, the world changes. And so the acceptable, pleasant kind of situation which you liked, that will change, bound to change. Therefore, suffering is inevitable. Do you see how the transitoriness of the world will lead to suffering? Inevitably. That's an insight that the Buddha got. All compounded things decay in the world. All things come together and they fall. Whatever has come together will fall apart. Bodies fall apart. Minds fall apart. Relationships fall apart. It's a cheerful guy. No, actually it is true. Professor Heinrich Zimmer, he said, a spirit of unbounded optimism underlies all Indian philosophy. Why? You know, what is negativity? What is pessimism? Hopelessness without any solution. That is pessimism. Whereas in Indian philosophy, except the Charvaka, the materialist, all other philosophers, all the schools of Buddhism, all the schools of Jainism, and certainly all the schools of Hinduism, Sikhism, all of them, they all say that a solution is possible. So, though their prognosis about the world is pretty negative, but their ultimate point is that you should be positive. There is a solution possible. They call it moksha, kaivalya, nirvana, whatever they call it. In fact, that's why religion, you might consider religion to be gloomy. Religion is fundamentally positive because it says a solution to the sufferings of the world is possible. So this is a general answer to Arjo's question. Now taking his particular, by the way, the audience here also can ask questions. When I finish with this, you raise your hands and I'll invite you to come here and ask. The answer to that particular question is, did God create people to suffer so that we can help them? No. Suffering is, as you saw, God has not made people suffer so that you can become a saint. Rather, through the process of your own suffering and helping others, one transforms oneself. One can only do the best one can. Once in a sea of suffering, do the best you can. Not that you can solve the problems of the world. One cannot. Even the great avatars have not solved the problems of the world. The world still is a pretty miserable place. But what we can do is, as Arju has understood correctly, is that by pursuing, by working for the welfare of others, one can transform oneself. And to some extent, definitely you can help others. Definitely you can help others.